Hi, everybody. My name is Alexis, and this is my first time going on this mission trip with this wonderful group of people. And, coming back and during the trip, I was just reflecting and thinking, what is one word or one way I could describe this trip and what's happened on this trip when people ask, how was Mexico? And I just sat down with God and was praying, how do I even bring justice to this trip or even give a fraction of what was going on? And I think the closest thing that I could say is that I was just absolutely moved. And I was moved by the Holy Spirit and through God's hands and feet and through the encouragement and love that was poured out, by the families and by the staff and all of you guys who were supporting us every step of the way. And so even though there's a lot of things that I would love to talk about, I'll just keep it brief with a summary. A beautiful imagery that God painted for me on this trip that was right in front of me this whole time, but as I was reflecting, I just realized it. How for our house team, we were actually on a hill, and I had the pleasure of being on the roof and helping with the roofing process, and we were looking out, and it was a beautiful view, and we were literally on a hill, so I felt like I was on top of the world. And there's this song called Hills and Valleys, and it just really reflected how I felt in that moment, how the song says that when we're standing on a mountain, I didn't get there on my own. And that just was proved time and time again. I just looked around all around me and saw the humility, how I'm not here on this trip because I got myself here. It was through God, and how every step of the way God sustained me through his strength, because let's be honest, if I just relied on myself, I would have burned out on the first day. So, and then it also says when I'm on this mountain that I will bow my life to you. So it just kind of reminds me, glorify God in all that you do, in all your accomplishments, all your words and actions. Let it shine for him. And coming back on this trip, I actually started to feel homesick, but not homesick from Clovis, but homesick not being in Mexico anymore. And I think physically I'm here, but spiritually I'm homesick from, just serving the families down there. And it just kind of shows that in seasons of life we're going to have those valleys, how we're going to be faced with distractions or temptations, or even maybe being discouraged from sharing our testimonies or what's happened on this trip. And I just want this to be a reminder to myself as well as everybody here that in those times of being in valleys, look up to the one who put me there. He's so good and he's so faithful, and you're never alone. And so through God, the God of hills and valleys has shown me to always seek his face, and that he will show you back to the El Camino, or the way. Thank you.
Great job. Alexis for president, just saying.
Hi, my name is Pam, and this was my second year going, and I just wanted to share that every day I got to go to a site up the hill, I was with Alexis, and build a home for a family, and every day I saw the love of Christ in my team and the love that they poured into our family there. I'm now a new mom of 14 children because I was the team mom on the house, and they encouraged me, we encouraged each other, but the love that these kids have, that this church has helped pour into them. If I just want to say one thing, if you get the opportunity to ever go on a trip or work with these kids or just cross the path and go over there and speak with these kids, they're amazing. If my kids grow up to be like any of these kids, I will be one blessed parent, because not only my 14 that I got to be with all week, but all of the kids on this trip, the love that they have for Christ is just beautiful. And the fact that they take their time and they go and they share and they work with these families and they pour into these families is just amazing. So I just encourage all of you to take time and to get to know the kids, and don't let there be any separation between the adults and the youth. We're just one big family, and I just want to say thank you.
Good work.
So one thing that this trip, I got to see God in this trip is the family that we were building a house with, because this year the mom and the two teenage kids were helping us the whole time build the house. They were involved. They had another young lady there who we asked who this young lady was, and it was a young lady that the mom had adopted because the girls, they were teenagers, so the young lady's real mom had abandoned her. And this mom, who we were building this house for or with, had adopted this girl, had just said, well, come be my daughter. And, getting to see that and to see that family work in the gospel and bring them together like that, and then to see my own children do that as they worked on the house also, and other people's children, really solidified for me the idea that the gospel really serves to help us to transcend what we might think as traditional connections, and to build connections that are just so much stronger and so much greater in service of God. So that's one way I saw God.
Hi, my name is Kelly, and this was my first year going to Mexico. And I started attending FBCC just before Easter, so less than 3 months. I knew a few people, but other than that, there was no one here except for maybe the handful of people that I would see every Sunday. And God has blessed me so much on this trip. I now have 80 new family members. And yeah, just through this week, being with all of these amazing people and developing relationships with them, it has just shown me how much love is in this church and how much everyone here sees each other as family. And it really just solidified for me that this is my home church now. So I thank everyone here for this week.
Thank you. And just to remind you, Kelly, you only have met 80 new family members. You still have hundreds more to get to know. Amen? Go ahead, Megan.
Hi, I'm Megan, and this was my 4th trip down to Mexico. And as per usual, I'm always drawn to the children that are around the houses and everything. And this week was one of those weeks where there's such a great sense of community. And it was from day one when members of the church were at our house site helping us paint and helping us build the house. And with them, they brought all sorts of kids, which made my heart so happy. But one child in particular, her name was Claudia. She was the cousin of the family we were building a home for, and she was just always on my side like glue and was helping me with my más o menos Spanish. And she would explain things to me and just show so much patience and love, and we really bonded. She was one of those people who always brightened my day, was first to give me a hug on the when we arrived, and on the last day when we were dedicating the house, we make a circle around the family, and she was hugging me the whole time for half an hour, and it just, I was already crying, but I was crying a lot more when she did that. And then as our family was going into the home, Amanda and I pulled her aside because we had gotten her a gift, and I gave it to her, and she just starts bawling. And her story is that her mom actually lives in Ohio, and she's working to get papers to bring her home with her. So she just had that family with her, and that was who she was with. And so when she got the gift, she was crying and just gave us hugs. And as we're leaving, I'm like, you're my best friend, forever. I'll always remember you. And she just looked at me and she's like, you're my sister, and I thank you for everything. And it just touched my heart a lot.
Awesome.
My name is Connie, and I'll not face these kids because they know the funny thing I did. When I was young, my grandmother had a garden, and I would go out and help her pick beans or pick which carrot to pull, and she was very patient because I had a million questions. And one day I asked her, Grandma, how do the beans know to stay in this row? And the potatoes know to stay in that row? And the carrots know to stay over there? And she said, it's easy. They grow where they're planted. I just took that as her answer, knew not to ask any more, and knew that if they got out of the row in her garden, she'd pull it. So, life went on. Well, on this Mexico trip, I learned that again. I was assigned by these people to house number 2. This is only my second year, so I sort of knew the ropes. I went to the house number 2 pizza party. We all did a T-shirt. We put our family's name on the back of the T-shirt. I drew a cute little picture, put house number 2 on with house number 2. I knew that Dan was the guy that was helping build the house. He was the head guy. And I knew I was on his house last year, and I thought, well, I'm riding down in Dan's van. I'll be on Dan's house. There's not too much I could screw up. Wrong. First morning, I go to the van that I rode down there in, which I thought was Dan's van. He drove it. Norm was his sidekick, and Norm was behind the wheel. Everybody piles in the van. I'm talking away. We're on the way to the site, and I said, where's Dan? Well, Jeff was up there. They go, no, our house, Jeff is on our house. I'm in the wrong van. So I panicked because now my T-shirt's got the wrong name on it. I have bought things for the children of the house I was assigned to that aren't going to match the little boy that is at my house. I've got brushes because I went last year. The brushes were no good, so I stuck brushes in my suitcase. I am prepared. See, you don't know me very well, but see, what I do is I make a plan and then pray God goes along with it. That's my MO. And so God was laughing and saying, ha ha, you got in the wrong van. Nothing's going to work. The T-shirt's not going to be right. Nothing's going to be right. So I'm panicking, but this house number 4 accepted me with all of my anxieties. Poor Nick I was supposed to be on Nick's house, so when they got to their house and started praying and somebody said, where's Connie? He went all the way back to the compound. I'm sure he was in Panicville till they realized I was the one that did it. But it was a lesson for me that I grew where I was planted. Mm-hmm. So I just want you to know that this is an amazing group. I have grandchildren that are coming up to be in this group, and I know that this is where I was transplanted for a reason. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Matt, and how I saw God this last week was a little different than I had in years past because this is my 4th year going. I really saw God in the encouragement and the joy and the love that all of these people you see sitting in front of you shared and kind of like shined onto the people surrounding us down in Mexico, whether it was the families, the interns, the Yugo staff, and whether we were doing Happy Pants dances or Afro Thunder, the joy we brought to other people and how it seemed to kind of light up these people's worlds that are down there serving or being served. And it really just stood out to me that God will use you no matter what your background, no matter who you are, no matter what you do. He will use you to do his work, and he will work through you no matter what.
Amen.
Hi, so I'm Justin, and this is my 2nd year going here. And before I tell my first story, I have to kind of say a mini testimony so you can kind of understand it. So on the house last year, I grew really close with my kids, and they really liked piggyback rides. So I'd give them piggyback rides all the time. And on the very last day, I was so sad, so I wanted to give the girl the fastest piggyback ride I could. And we tripped and fell, and it was not good. She was crying, I was crying, and I was so sad because I was afraid that they were going to remember me for all the bad stuff that happened instead of the good stuff that happened earlier in the week. So I went back home, and I was crying a lot, and then I realized Nick said, don't let Satan take this trip away from you. So with that change in mentality, I went and the next day I tried to make everything better, and it was as if nothing ever happened. So that was kind of my testimony from last year. And this year at church, we went to a local church in Mexico, and we had the chance to share testimonies. They were like, the pastor was like, if you have any testimonies you want from this year, then feel free to share them with us. And since mine was from last year and it was kind of a while ago, I kind of thought that it was kind of irrelevant at this point, I guess. So I decided not to say anything about it. So we go to the church, and as the day goes on, I start realizing that it's, I don't know, like I made a mistake. I probably shouldn't have done it. And, but I didn't want to because I was scared that it wasn't going to be good enough, because the other girls have been like prepping for like 2-3 hours trying to get their testimonies ready. So I was afraid that if I did mine, it would not end up being to the same level as theirs would be. So I was contemplating that. And then as the last testimony finally finished, I kind of had like a sudden realization. I was like, Justin, you're on a missionaries trip. That's what we're here, is to spread our faith and our testimony. So I just went up and I shared my story, and God put the words out of my mouth that needed to be said, and everything ended up being perfect. And I'm so glad I was able to get to do this, and through that I was able to learn that God, sometimes he's just waiting for you to take the first step, and he's there to guide you along his path. So I guess you can translate that to you guys. For any of you guys who are thinking about going to Mexico, I definitely recommend just sticking your foot out and just giving it a try, and I guarantee God's going to lead you along that path. And yeah.
Good word.
All right, so my name is Aaron, and this is my second Mexico trip. And I just want to share with you guys something that I experienced down there, how I saw God. So the first day that we got to the work sites, they had us get in a circle, and we introduced ourselves to the family. And they said, say your name and one thing about yourself. So I said, my name is Aaron, and I play guitar in the church. Little did I know that the dad of the family that we built the house for, is the worship leader at his church that we were going to go to on Wednesday. So throughout the week leading up to that, the dad came up to me and he was trying to talk to me, and I don't really know Spanish that well, so I was like, yeah. He's like, you play guitar? I'm like, yeah. And then he said a bunch of other things. I was like, yeah. So, and then so on a Wednesday we're working on the house, and he comes up to us, and we already knew that they wanted us to share testimonies at the church, but he said that he wanted us to also worship up there as well. So he was like, I guess he said, you're going to play guitar? I'm like, yeah, all right, I will. And then so we get to the church on Wednesday, and that's how I realized that the streets in Mexico are all just one big speed bump. And so we get there, and there's no sheet music, so we kind of have to do it by ear a little bit, so I was kind of nervous about that. But once we started playing the songs, like, I just felt like God was really like showing me like this is how like he's working through all of us. Like, we're two different groups of people from two different cultures, two different languages, but he could bring us together like that. And when I was worshiping up there, it was one of the best experiences that I've ever had. So I just wanted to share that with you guys.
Well, for years I sat right where you're sitting now, and I watched my own children go to Mexico multiple times, and then they even took their own children. And I wanted to go. I wanted to go so bad. I've always wanted to go. So last year, this time I was watching the crowd sitting up here. I said, I'm going to go next year. I'm just going to go. So I told them, no, I'm not working summer school. I'm going to go to Mexico. And I said, okay. So that was great. I planned. I went to all the meetings, and I was excited to go. And then VBS happened, and the day after VBS, I don't know whether it was up and down off the floor. Somehow my knee just started killing me, started hurting. And I thought, this better be over before I go to Mexico. It wasn't. So Tom fortunately put me on the cut team I had really looked forward to, pushing up the walls and climbing on the roof, and I was really discouraged that I wasn't going to be able to do those things that I just love to do anyway. And I thought for days before, I was thinking maybe I shouldn't go. Maybe this was just a dream, that I'm just a sender and I'm not a goer. But the very first day, we get a board, and we put it on the saw table, and I'm at the other end of it. And I flashed back to pretty much my whole life, where I stood at the other end of the board where my dad was cutting. And even now in the garage where my son is cutting, I'm at the other end of the board. And between Christian and Tom and I, we stacked up all this wood for each wall. And I was focused on that job, and I turned around, and the walls were up. They were there. I'd heard the hammering, but I hadn't looked over. And I thought, hey, I am here. And God can use me. And I was weak. But it's His strength that built that house. I just held a board. Somebody else just held a hammer. Somebody else slung some mud on the walls inside. And it all came together. It didn't take my strength. It didn't take me, pushing boards around and doing what's done on building a house. It was me being part of a team that made something happen that was much bigger than a house. It was building love and faith and growing together and watching the joy of a mom and dad and two little ones that will have a place to sleep. So I encourage you, no matter how old you are, to plan and think about going, because you don't need to be it all. You just have to be willing. And I think all these kids here and adults and if you've ever wondered, those of you who are my age and older, just what the church is going to look like, this is it. And God's raising up some really good people to lead after we're all gone. So thank you to my team and everyone.
Hi, my name is Brittany, and this is my 4th year going. And this year was a little bit different for me. Normally, leading up to the trip, I was so excited to go back and hammer on the roof and be painting and being all hands-on, because that's like what I like to do when I went. But then on day 2, I actually hurt my right hand, which is kind of important when swinging a hammer. And so I was really discouraged, and I didn't know why I was on this trip anymore. I'm like, God, what do you want me to do? Because I felt really useless I can't help do anything. I just have my left hand. So by Wednesday, I had broken down, and my sister really helped me on encouraging me and encouraged me to keep going. And so I prayed a lot to God, and I'm like, why am I here? What do you have planned for me? I'm here for something. What is it? And I realized towards the end of the trip, when we dedicated our house, that I had never gotten the chance to play or build a relationship with the kids that were on my previous houses. And this year, I was able to be friends with our little 2-year-old and our 8-year-old boy, Marcos, and we played football, which is soccer here. And looking back, I see that I was actually able to connect with the kids and their cousin, who had actually made me a bracelet. And so I saw that, like Cindy said, it's not always about the house that we're building or the home that we're building for them. It's about the relationships made and extending our church family. And now we have family down in Mexico that we didn't have before. And so that's the way that God opened my eyes on this trip.
Good morning. My name is Sandy, and this is my 4th year going to Mexico. I'd like to share a couple things I feel like the Lord taught me this week. The first is I'm a teacher, and I do have second language learners in my classroom, and I got the unfortunate or fortunate lesson, I guess how you choose to look at it, of what that feels like to be a second language learner. Annie and I had an experience of going to Home Depot, and I'm pretty familiar with Home Depot, but not in Spanish. And we were on a mission for some really small items that are really difficult to find, and we spent what would have taken me 5 minutes in Home Depot here, took us about 45 minutes to try to find things. And I thought, oh, Lord, what a struggle kids must go through who are trying to learn English. And I thought, okay, this is a good lesson for me to take home, to remember this feeling so I could be more patient with them in my classroom. But the bigger lesson that I learned this week, my daughter, Sarah, who's not here today, I asked her yesterday, I said, what was your takeaway from this week? And she said, you know, Mom, when I smiled at people, people just smiled back. And they were happy. And she said in this moment that I'll never forget, because it was such a small space, but it means so much, she said, love knows no language. It has no language barrier. It really does speak to every person. I know everybody on this trip would know that, because we, and everybody in this room, can feel God's love. You know, he knows no language barrier. And I appreciate that lesson that I learned this week.
Hi, I'm JJ. This is my 4th year going to Mexico. I wasn't originally planning on going to Mexico. I thought about it and I went to the first meeting, but it wasn't, I just kind of like decided that I didn't want to go this year. But something about that just didn't seem right. And so 10 days before we left for Mexico, there happened to be an open seat that my friend had, and I decided to take it. I knew God was going to use me some way this trip, and I didn't know what it was, but Monday night, I was like, okay, like, what are you going to do? Like, I'm ready for you to do something. And then Tuesday, all day, I was like, okay, God, like, show me something. Did I miss it? And I started becoming, like, impatient. But I realized that before the trip, God wanted me just to, like, let everything go. And he wanted me to just fully trust him with my whole heart. Our house wasn't exactly the easiest house to build. We struggled a lot, but we continued trusting God, and our foreman said teamwork will make the house work, and that was kind of like the quote of the week. So Tuesday night at chapel, we started talking about going to the local church, and Nick was like, okay, like, they would like some people to share their testimonies, and before I knew I was going to go to Mexico, I was talking to Amanda and some of my other friends about how I really felt like God wanted me to share my testimony. And so I was like, okay, like, I went up to Amanda and I was like, okay, I'm going to share my testimony. And so the next day, on Wednesday, when we were going to go to the local church, Katie was like, yeah, we're gonna sing there too. And I was like, oh, okay. So we got to the church, and I sat down. She's like, no, come on, like, we have to go on stage now. And I was like, oh my gosh, Katie, I thought you were kidding. Like, no. And so she's like, no, you can do it. So I encouraged my friend Megan to come with me, and so we all led worship there, and then I shared my testimony. But throughout this entire week, I have been encouraged just to trust God, and every day I noticed God chipping away at me, and I tend to hide who I really am sometimes. And Nick was talking about how we should carry our cross, like, across the border, and the person I became in Mexico, I didn't know I could be, and I want to carry that person, like, over the border with me and continue being that person. So.
Hi, I'm Eric. This is my second year going, and I just want to thank Nick for your leadership on these trips and preparing us, because one thing from the first Mexico meeting that Nick brings up is, and you heard Justin say it, don't let Satan steal your trip. And we're hearing about all kinds of God sightings. I'm going to tell you that Satan's at work, and they're at work. He's at work on this team. So Jeff and I got our team several weeks ago, and we thought, this is going to be pretty easy. We got a good group of young teenagers. We got Tim Hunter, who could probably build the house all by himself, and we got Carol and Cheryl to keep us light. So the first day we get there, they say, well, you guys are the special ops house. What does that mean? I don't know. So we go to the construction meeting, and every team gets plans. Here's your plans. Here's how the house is going to go together. Here's how it's going to go. Well, about us? So Tim and I and Jeff are all in there wanting to get some information about what are we doing. And the foreman that's in charge of all the foremen says, yeah, I don't know. The guy who you're going to meet on job site tomorrow, Juan, who thankfully was a long-time foreman, he's got it together. So, okay, so we go there in doubt. When we get there, there's 4 walls that are already up. Piece of cake. We got to build a roof. We're going to put some curtains in this thing. We're going to build a couple walls, do some drywall. This is going to be fun. It was every bit different than that. So none of the walls were straight. We were going to try to put a square roof on a trapezoid building. It was 9 feet tall, and all of our ladders except for one went 6 feet. We were short ladders. We were short materials. We were short shingles. We were short tar paper. We ran out of plywood. We ran out of nails. We had to cut we ran out of shining, Bryant, flashing. We had to cut every piece of drywall to go on the ceiling. We had to cut just about every piece of plywood to go on the roof. And there was so many opportunities for our team to get frustrated or to start to bicker and fight. And I realized my God siding was God put our team together. God assembled our team to fight that battle with Satan. Because whether it was Bryant or it was Norm or it was Cheryl, somebody with a light comment or somebody with an encouraging word. We had Edna. Edna speaks Spanish. She knows the Mexican culture better than anybody. So we were set up to have all kinds of success, and to see us get derailed every single day only to drive to a church 30 miles away, and we were assembled with Aaron and Brandon and Jeff and Katie and Caitlin and JJ, who all got up and poured out their hearts and worshiped, and the encouragement that gave us to finish our house. Fantastic. And for me to see how God, one, puts Nick in charge to prepare us. Don't let Satan take your trip. Be aware. Here's what's going to happen. Here's what you need to be prepared for. And then to assemble our team the way he did, truly amazing, and just very, very grateful and blessed.
Thanks, brother. We're gonna have one more person share, and after Dave is done sharing here, I told them, make eye contact with me if you want to share. So I got awkwardly all these eyes like, give me the microphone. But we're already 7 minutes over, right? Which I don't apologize for, because this is special. I do thank you, though, for your patience. I'm going to have Dave share, and again, I want to encourage you after we sing our last song together to grab one of these fine people up here. Say, tell me something. Were you making eyes with Nick? And tell me the story. I want to hear it. So, Dave, go ahead and...
Thanks. This is my 3rd trip with this church on a mission field. I've been on many more with our previous church before we came here. And it's just amazing how every time you think you're going to go on these trips and you think, okay, this is what God's going to do for me, he doesn't. He does something completely different. And on this trip, one of the things, I'm going to talk about a couple of things, but one of the things he did with me specifically was really work on relationships. And a lot of you probably are laughing going, hey, you're Mr. Happy. But, yeah, he wanted me to work on not just current relationships, but I also work on new relationships, people that I didn't know prior to this trip. And I really built some very, very strong bonds with, and we're going to have friendships forever because of that. But that's not what I want to talk to you about. You know, one of the things that Nick does during chapel down there is at the end of chapel, he always asks, hey, does anybody have any God sightings? And so you're always thinking, and you're always trying to look throughout the day, where, how did God work? How did God work? And it really occurred to me as I'm driving home that the God sighting is right in front of us. And you sometimes look past it. Because God put together a team of 80 people that come from different walks of life, different walks in their spiritual life, different ages, different life experiences. And he brought us together, and as a group, as a body, we made it. We through him, we were able to have or help build an impact moment, a life-changing moment, an event for 4 families down there that completely changes their lives. And by doing that, you've heard a couple times, part of it is by us doing that, by God working through us to do that, we're planting seeds, and these seeds are hopefully going to germinate to where they're going to pay it forward as well. They're going to continue to grow the kingdom. And then I started thinking even further back, going, okay, wow, God, we'll never be able to see those seeds ever grow. That's for God to see. But then, again, when I'm looking at, okay, we have a God sighting in front of us, then I think, okay, we also have a real example of a seed being planted and what it has turned into. And he's going to hate me for this, so be quiet. But 20 years ago, a seed was planted in a teenager who went down to Mexico to this ministry, fell in love with the Mexican culture, fell in love with the Mexican people, and the ministry of Yugo. And over the 20 years, God has worked on Nick, for example. And through all these years of leading teams, he has now made impact moments and life-changing events in so many people, including everyone on this team, including me, and the families down there. So on behalf of the team, Nick, we love you, and we really respect and just appreciate everything you pour in to this every year. And I don't think any of us can ever thank you enough. And I know it's God working, but we also want to thank you, Nick, for that. And as a team, what do we say when we close out encouragement? You are faithfully and wonderfully made. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So what we'd like to do is close out this time by worshiping with you a song that we really grew to love this year. So I'm going to ask the band to get ready. Again, grab one of these awesome people here. Ask them their story. They did an amazing job. I'm very proud of them. And we're going to sing a song for you and with you. We ask that you stand and worship our God with us to this music.